Welcome to another episode of Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement Podcast, where certified financial planner Lauren Sherman shares thoughts on having a healthy mind, body, and spirit, an abundance of wealth inside portfolios and out, and lessons learned from clients and mentors over the years.
Welcome to another Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement. I am your host, Lauren Sherman, but today we are going to flip the script a bit as I have a co-host who will be asking me a few questions. This was a completely impromptu conversation, but on a recent visit down to Kansas City, I had the chance to hop on the mic and answer a few questions about our firm, Integrity Wealth Management. If you've been listening for a while, this will likely be redundant to what you've heard in the past. I used to try and avoid repetition and be sure to always have new content, but I've started to embrace this just a bit, as I think a consistent message is really important. For me, personally, when I hear companies who have a consistent message, it shows that they're being true to their values, and it can be refreshing in a world where we honestly see companies change their message just trying to please their audience in that moment. So stick around for this quick conversation, and as always, you can click the link in the show notes titled Share More and Get in Touch, particularly if any of this resonates with you and you'd like to chat more. We are in the process of bringing on about 6 new clients this year, and if you think we might be a good fit to work together, clicking that link and completing our short questionnaire would be the first step. Without further ado, let's jump right in.
All right, everybody. Well, we've got a guest in-house today. We've got Lauren Sherman of Integrity Wealth Management visiting us from Des Moines, Iowa, or the greater Des Moines area. Lauren, thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, yeah, just wanted to kind of recap your last day and a half visit here. Some of the things that you saw that you felt were important in helping you in your practice move in the direction and the vision that you have for it over the next couple of years. And then after that, you have a little bit of an interesting practice setup. We'll dive into that, kind of the dynamics of that as well.
Sure. Lots of great stuff these last couple of days. It's hard to condense it all in. Most recently, we just got done with the marketing, so that's top of mind. And man, they can certainly do a lot. So it made me realize that I'm barely scratching the surface. You know, having your own RIA, you wear a lot of hats, and if you don't do a great job of delegating some of those hats to the people that are really good at those services, then you can find yourself just neglecting those and end up not doing them at all, really, because at the end of the day, it's always going to be your clients first and everything that it takes to help them in their financial planning. Probably your prospecting often comes second, and then a lot of the marketing stuff and things of that nature just get pushed down to the to-do list. So I think what really resonated with me big time from this trip was the marketing stuff and all that they can do, and really delegate it to them so that you don't have to wear that hat.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sarah and her team, they do a great job of staying on the cutting edge with technology, things that are changing, what's working with other advisors, all across the country for that matter, and keeping all of our advisors in the loop on what's working, what's not. And like you'd mentioned, taking some of that burden off of their plate and onto theirs and letting you guys run a little bit more of an efficient practice at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm going to shift gears here real quick. Tell everybody a little bit more about your practice, your experience within the industry, kind of how you got to this point that you're at today.
Yeah. So about 15 years into the industry in total, and around 2015 was when I kind of turned the microscope on my own industry, I guess you could say, and didn't like a lot of what I found. And there was just a lot of things, you know, it becomes a little bit too much of a sales culture sometimes. You know, the fiduciary word is the big hot word out there now, where are you giving clients the best advice that you can? And then on top of that, are you always acting as a fiduciary, or can you sometimes put that hat on and then talk to them as a fiduciary and then take that hat off and talk to them as a salesperson?
Sure.
So that's a really kind of a soapbox topic of mine too, but not to go down that rabbit hole too much. But yeah, in 2015 or so when I did that, one thing that really stood out to me was that, you know, this is my perspective. Not everyone's going to share this vision, but It takes, for me, the planning process is the same whether someone has $1 million or $10 million. And the difficulty, I guess, of managing that portfolio, it's one more zero. It's not any additional difficulty. It's the exact same process that we're putting in place. So for me, it just seemed silly that we were charging roughly, let's call it 10 times more for that person that had $10 million. Of course, they have the resources to pay that fee. And then on the flip side of that, you might be doing all sorts of work for someone that, let's call it $100,000, and they might be paying you a small fraction of your fee or of what your quote unquote value would be. So,
but they're consuming more of your time is what you're getting at.
Yeah. And sometimes, I say the $10 million client isn't 10 times more difficult to handle or the process. And honestly, sometimes it's the $1 million client that is a little bit more challenging because there's a little bit less leeway for mistakes, or I don't know if mistakes is the right word, but, with $10 million, you have a little bit more leeway there where someone trying to create retirement income with a $1 million portfolio, you got to be on point there. You can't have any loose ends, can't have any drag in the portfolio is one way of saying it. I guess in a roundabout way, what I'm saying is that $1 million portfolio is even more challenging sometimes. So my vision was a flat fee just makes a lot of sense regardless of the size of the portfolio because people are paying you for your time and your expertise. And it seemed like this vision was, it was like, how am I going to make this happen? And then shortly after I had this idea, someone came on the Michael Kitces podcast and talked through his business model, and it was essentially exactly what I had in my head. So the timing was pretty amazing with that. And then it's like anything, you own a white truck, and now you probably recognize white trucks anywhere you drive, I bet.
Sure.
So for me, I started noticing more and more flat fee only, where it was not based on the size of the portfolio, advisors out there. I started noticing them. And they're still very few and far in between, but it's kind of a tight-knit community. So we became friends and bounce ideas off each other. And it's I came originally from the insurance world where it's a little bit more cutthroat. And within the RIA space, and even more so, I would say the flat fee space, it seems to be a group with an abundance mentality. And that's really what I tried to share too, because the question I get very often is, well, your fee makes sense for people who have $1 million or more, but what about that person who comes along that has $600,000? They really need your help. I think it's just having an abundance mentality that it's okay if you turn some people down, especially when you can point them in the right direction to another advisor that can help, as long as you're staying true to your model and you have that abundance mentality that you don't have to feel like you have to be the right fit for everybody.
Sure. And so just so everybody is clear and on the same page, so you charge just a flat fee for your advisory business. It's not dictated upon how many dollars are under management with your firm. Regardless of your portfolio, it's just a flat fee. And that flat fee across the board, is it the same or different depending on, are there different tiers that you can fall into, or how exactly does it work?
Yeah, you got it. It's the same exact flat fee. It's pretty darn simple. It's $750 per month. We put it right on our website, so it's very transparent and out in the open for anybody that wants to check it out. And that tends to make sense for retirees that are kind of right around $1 million or north of that number. And then, of course, the multiplier there is if you have $5 million, then it makes even more sense, and it becomes
cheaper.
Becomes a little bit more of a no-brainer. And I never like to make it about the fee. You don't want to be quote unquote less expensive than others, because as soon as you earn business based on being less expensive, you can lose it because you're not as, someone else is less expensive. It can always come in. So we really, really focus on the quality of the actual services that we provide. But the fee, it's hard to ignore that just because it is such a different, against the grain business structure, I guess you could say, than
Sure.
99% of the RAs or advisors out there, it seems.
Interesting. And so when you're sitting down with clients face to face and you're going over your fee structure, I guess here's kind of the interesting way to phrase it. Is it well perceived? Is it confusing to the consumer? Do they not know any different? Or what's kind of their temperature on it based upon your experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think if people were to go out and, let's say, quote unquote, interview 5 or 6 different advisors, they'll probably find 5 or 6 different variations of the same type of fee. Someone might charge 1.5%, someone might charge 1%, someone might give them a little discount and charge them 90 basis points or something like that. But it's kind of different variations of the same thing. So our fee just being flat, there is a little bit of an educational standpoint. I was mentioning this to you earlier, but naturally our brains just think in terms of hard numbers and not percentages.
Sure.
So when you give someone a percentage of 1%, people kind of naturally think, well, I'm still keeping 99% of the whole pie.
Yep.
Without really understanding how much 1% is and how much it compounds over time. Mm-hmm. So often, our fee of $750 a month, that equates to $9,000 a year. And I've sat down with people who are paying $35,000, $40,000 a year to their advisor, and it might even be that they're paying a little bit less than 1%. And they'll look at the $9,000, and some people think, gosh, that's a great deal. Am I missing something? Is there something you're not doing? And then other times people think, well, why is your $9,000? Why is that so expensive? Not even realizing that they might be paying 3 or 4 times that currently.
Sure. Sure.
So,
yeah. It's interesting when you put it into a dollar perspective, kind of like what you mentioned just a moment ago. You say that $34,000 versus $9,000. I mean, obviously both are a pretty substantial amount of money for most Americans, but you're just like, wow, that's, you stack it up versus a percentage, 1%, kind of the, I think, analogy you made earlier, 99 versus 1. Well, that doesn't sound like very much,
right.
But when that 1% is $30,000, $40,000, it kind of raises an eyebrow a little bit.
And I think it's always a matter of we don't, like I said, I hate to make it too much about the fee, but we're always looking to provide excess value multiples beyond what that fee is. So hopefully you're getting a much better deal than what you're paying.
Yeah.
But there is a little bit of the transparency of putting the fee right in front of your face and not kind of having it, well, it just comes off the top of your gains is kind of the way I think sometimes advisors talk. We almost create an additional hurdle for ourselves initially because there's a little bit of an education component there. But then beyond that, I really try to focus on the fact that, not only is our fee very different, but we're also doing comprehensive planning. And I know everybody will tell you, and every advisor, there's not a single one out there that's going to say that they're not doing comprehensive planning. But then I think the follow-up question needs to be, what does that look like? And if they kind of stumble and have not sure, that's where we have deliverables, examples, and can say, here's our process, here's what it looks like. We put you through this retirement risk analysis. We do the tax planning and have the tax analysis that goes into that. So we're a very tax-centric planning firm. And I think that's a differentiator too, because so many firms, just from a compliance standpoint, can't even really talk about taxes, to be quite frank. And then I already mentioned this, so I'll real briefly cover it, but the third component, I would say there's the fee. We're very much against the grain there. Doing the comprehensive planning, particularly with the tax-centric planning, I would say is against the grain from a certain perspective, because there's a lot of advisors that still, they're almost investment only or investment centric at least, like you're hiring them to manage your assets, and that's kind of where the end of the relationship goes, where we really want to be a planning centric firm and a tax centric firm. And then the third one that's a big differentiator, I think, that I mentioned earlier was the fiduciary always is the term I use, or fiduciary only is another way of saying that. And fiduciary, just kind of a fancy way of saying that not only ethically and morally are you obligated to act in your client's best interest, but you're also legally required to as well. And to me, that should be the standard, but that's not where the industry is at this point. So you have to still stand by that. A lot of firms, a lot of advisors, they're not acting as fiduciaries. They're acting more, I guess, from a sales capacity, for lack of a better way of saying it. And then on top of that, the ones that do say they're fiduciaries, like I said before, it's almost worse from the standpoint where you can market yourself as a fiduciary. You can tell the world that you're a fiduciary, but then you can take that hat off and act as a salesperson with the next sentence out of your mouth. And if you're the retiree sitting across the table, you don't know which hat your advisor's wearing when they're giving you advice.
Sure. Last question before we need to run. The fee structure, obviously we've covered. Unique, different concept. I know you'd mentioned it's kind of a smaller knit group of you guys that are charging the flat fee versus the traditional style of your 1% give or take of the overall portfolio. Do you see in the future more advisors gravitating towards this type of setup or structure?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think that this industry in particular is slow to change, and it's not always going to be in the advisor's best interest, you could say, particularly the ones that are really well established and have a ton of assets under management. They're not going to be in a rush to quit charging a percentage on those accumulated assets that they manage. But like all things, I think the more that the market gets educated on it and the more they start seeing the options out there, Michael Kitces is his XYP planning. They are proponents of the hourly or flat fee schedule. And I think it's becoming more and more of a thing, but it's still a very slow industry to make drastic changes. So it'll probably be a slow change.
Yeah, couldn't agree more that the industry sometimes a little slow at times to adapt change.
Sure.
With that being said, looks like we're up for time today. Lauren, once again, thank you very much for making the trip down here, visiting us for the last day and a half.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening and supporting this podcast. If you've enjoyed listening, we would love if you took a quick moment to leave an honest review. Of course, we're shooting for 5 stars, but if you have suggestions to improve the show, we would love to hear from you too. Just click on the podcast name, Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement Podcast, and scroll down to ratings and review. Thanks again for your support, as this helps us reach a wider audience and help even more retirees just like you. This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not intended as a specific tax, legal, or investment advice. Lauren Sherman is a certified financial planner and co-owner of Integrity Wealth Management, an investment advisor serving retirees in search of their own healthy, wealthy, and wise retirement lifestyle.